Queensland Liberal MP Steve Ciobo is the Parliamentary Secretary to the Foreign Affairs and Trade Ministers, and he joins me now from Canberra. Welcome, Steve Ciobo.
Good evening, Emma.
How did you vote tonight?
Well, the party room overwhelmingly voted for a change of leader of the Liberal Party. So Malcolm Turnbull, of course, is our new Prime Minister.
Is that how you voted personally?
Well, look, what matters is how the party room voted, Emma, and I'm just not going to get caught up in who voted where, because now is the time for the party room to unite as one behind our new leader. That's absolutely what I'm determined and focused on doing. And the party room overwhelmingly wants to get on with the job that we're elected to do, which is to defeat the Australian Labor Party, to provide strong economic stewardship for Australia and to generate jobs for the Australian people.
Tony Abbott and Matthias Cormann today both emphatically protested before the vote that yours is not the Labor Party, but there does seem to be an uncanny resemblance, doesn't there? Rudd, Gillard, Rudd, Turnbull, Abbott, Turnbull.
I'm not going to argue, Emma, that these things are unseemly. Of course they are. And in an ideal world, this wouldn't happen. But look, what transpired today was a clear consensus, a clear direction, a clear vote, a clear majority from the party room that Malcolm Turnbull should lead the Liberal Party and therefore be Australia's Prime Minister, that he should take us forward with a narrative that he's already started to outline. It's a narrative that the party room to face and what we will be doing to overcome those economic challenges, to make sure we can drive jobs, to drive economic growth and to drive our national prosperity.
Will Tony Abbott stay in the Parliament?
Well, look, you're going to have to put that question to the former Prime Minister. Tony Abbott has obviously done an outstanding job as a representative for Warringah for a long period of time. He's someone who I also believe did an outstanding job as Prime Minister of the country. There's a very long track record of success that he had, both as opposition leader and as Prime Minister. So ultimately, that will be his decision about what he intends to do.
The risk, of course, is that you get destabilisation within the party from disgruntled supporters of Tony Abbott, indeed potentially Tony Abbott himself if he goes to the back bench. You know, you've seen this before in the Labor Party. Do you fear that some might look to exact some kind of revenge from the backbench?
You know, Emma, look, that's a possibility. I'm not going to pretend that it's not. But the point that I'm stressing to you, and the point that I made right in response to your very first question, is that the party room has spoken in an overwhelming sense. There's a clear consensus from the party room that this is the new direction going forward, that this is now going to be a government with a slightly different narrative to what we've had before. We're not walking away from past decisions we've taken. What we're doing, though, is evolving upon those past decisions with a new narrative and a new focus as will be set down by Malcolm Turnbull over the coming days, weeks and months. That's what the Australian people ultimately, I believe, are focused on. That's what they're more interested in, and I think that ultimately will be where they choose to put their support in the future.
You say you're not stepping away from the direction you were heading in. In fact,
well, I said from past decisions. From
past decisions, indeed. Sure. Malcolm Turnbull has already signalled that on climate change and same-sex marriage, he won't be changing the party's policies. So isn't it possible that the public looks at this and thinks all you've really done is changed the salesman, but your product is the same?
Well, I believe that Malcolm Turnbull, the majority of the party room believes that Malcolm Turnbull is the right man for the job to lead the Liberal Party, to be Prime Minister of our country, to outline a vision and a narrative for the Australian people about the challenges that we confront, about what we need to do to overcome those challenges, and about the best policy solutions to meet the needs of ordinary Australians. Ultimately, you know, there will be people who won't like some of the decisions, and that's common for politics. But we will still remain focused on what we were elected to do, and I think put a very contestable position forward at the next federal election.
On Tony Abbott, Malcolm Turnbull said he wasn't capable of the successful economic leadership the country required. Do you agree?
The clear message that was coming from voters was that the coalition wasn't enunciating as clearly as we needed to about the economic challenges that as a nation we face. So we'll go forward now with a narrative that better reflects those challenges. You know, Joe Hockey is a close friend of mine. He did a very good job as Treasurer, but it'd also be remiss to not recognise that there were elements within the party room that felt that in terms of the leadership group that there needed to be change. There has been that change now, that's taken place. It's a tough, rough process, but now the party room with a clear majority is able to close around the new leadership group and to strike out in this direction.
When you say the new leadership group, who's likely to be Treasurer?
Well, look, that will be revealed in coming days. I mean, clearly Scott Morrison is anticipated to be the new Treasurer. I don't think there's any news flash in that, but ultimately that will be determined by the Prime Minister in consultation with Julie Bishop as Deputy Leader, and a determination made from there.
How do you expect Malcolm Turnbull to get on with the Nationals? Will the coalition agreement need to be renegotiated at all?
I don't think so, Emma. The fact is that when Malcolm Turnbull was leader of the Liberal Party previously, in opposition, you know, the Liberal Party and the National Party worked very well and very closely together. Now, clearly there's a lot of National Party members that are from my own state of Queensland. They're members of the Liberal National Party in Queensland. So I don't anticipate there being any real challenge there whatsoever.
What do you think ultimately will distinguish the Malcolm Turnbull leadership to that of Tony Abbott, such that the public will see that this is a renewed party?
Well, Malcolm Turnbull's a man with extraordinary vision. Anybody who's had dealings with Malcolm Turnbull would recognise that, for lack of a better term, he's a renaissance man. He's a man that brings a clear vision about where we should go in the future. He has a real wealth of commercial experience behind him, and now, of course, has a number of years of political experience behind him as well. I think he'll be able to strike out on behalf of the federal coalition as Prime Minister of our country with a vision for our nation going forward, a vision that embraces a lot of developments that are taking place in the commercial sphere, perhaps a slightly more nuanced position in relation to some of the social issues. So those combination of factors will mean that the coalition will still provide strong, steady Conservative principles, but will do so under the banner of Malcolm Turnbull and Julie Bishop as Leader and Deputy Leader.
What lessons do you think he's learnt from the last time he was Leader?
I think Malcolm Turnbull's a different guy in a number of respects from when he was last leader of the Liberal Party. Malcolm Turnbull, in my view, is someone who is more consultative now, someone who recognises that you've got to make sure that not only do you bring the Liberal Party with you, but you bring the people with you as well. And I think he made a telling point this evening in his press conference when he reinforced the key message, which is that we are a broad church. The Liberal Party has a multitude, I should say, of different positions and different views within it, and they all need to be embraced, because ultimately it's that rich tapestry of views which makes the Liberal Party very formidable, I believe, when it comes to election time.
I note that the Australian dollar ticked up slightly on the news of Malcolm Turnbull's victory this evening, indicating that the business community and the markets welcome his new position. There'll be a bit of expectation from the business community, won't there? And what do you think it is that they'll be looking for your government to do quite quickly?
Well, I think that the business community recognises that Malcolm Turnbull, as I said, is someone with a very strong pedigree in commerce. This is a man who's been very successful in business himself, a man who has an innate understanding of the commercial drivers in our community. And I think that's really important, Emma, because ultimately by understanding the business world, you also understand the key drivers that are important with issues like, for example, employment. You know, what's going to drive jobs for Australians? What's going to drive exports for Australia? What's going to drive national prosperity and the accumulation of national wealth? So perhaps what we're seeing is a reflection of that, and I think that's a positive.
Steve Jobo, thank you very much.